What if the greatest secrets of the universe are not spoken, but heard only in silence? Across the winding corridors of ancient temples, deep within the mountain caves of mystics, and in the still hearts of sages who disappeared from history, there echoes a single truth. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of something far greater. Long before words became our currency of meaning, silence was the medium through which the divine whispered its truth. In the stillness of the desert, Moses encountered the burning bush. In the quietude beneath the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha awoke as the Buddha. And in the hush of monasteries and mystery schools, students of the arcane sat in silence, not as an act of withdrawal, but as an act of initiation. But why silence? Why do all great traditions, Hermetic, Vedic, Gnostic, Sufi, Christian mystical, point to silence as the gateway? Because silence is not empty. It is pregnant with the invisible. It is where the seen meets the unseen. It is the key that unlocks the realms beyond the senses, those higher frequencies of being that cannot be reached by logic, intellect, or speech. In this video, we will journey into the sacred depths of silence. You'll learn why ancient adepts guarded it so fiercely, how it's been used as a portal to other planes of consciousness, and what it means to practice it in the modern world filled with noise and distraction. We'll explore its philosophical roots, decode its esoteric meaning, and, most importantly, show you how to use silence to connect with something greater than yourself. This is not a practice in muting the world. It is a revelation of the world beneath the noise, the world within you. So listen carefully. The silence is already speaking. To understand why silence is revered across mystical traditions, we must go backward, into the ancient temples of Egypt, across the snow-covered Himalayas, and into the shadowed libraries of early Christian mystics. Silence was never simply a lack of speech. It was seen as a force, a bridge between the mundane and the divine. In ancient Egypt, silence was considered one of the highest virtues of the initiate. In the Hermetic texts, particularly the Emerald Tablets, the teachings of Thoth speak of the importance of inner stillness to perceive the light within the darkness. The initiate was taught not merely to listen to the priest, but to listen beyond the priest, to the voice of the cosmos that could only be heard when the inner chatter ceased. This is why the Sphinx, guardian of mysteries, is depicted in eternal silence, lips sealed, watching, knowing, waiting. In the Vedic tradition, silence mauna was not simply a discipline but a yogic path in itself. Sage Patanjali's Yoga Sutras emphasize pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, as a precursor to true meditation. By moving inward and silencing sensory input, one could tap into higher states of consciousness. The Upanishads, those radiant gems of Indian mysticism, often speak in paradoxes and riddles, but their ultimate truths are delivered in silence. The self is known in silence, the texts say. He who speaks does not know. He who knows does not speak. The Christian mystics, from Meister Eckhart to St. John of the Cross, describe divine silence as the space where God resides. Eckhart wrote, "There is nothing so like God as silence." For them, silence was not a void, but a fullness too vast for words. In the stillness of contemplation, the mystic was absorbed into the divine presence, not by praying with words, but by surrendering to the sacred quiet between them. In the Sufi tradition, the practice of samt, spiritual silence, was central. Rumi himself wrote, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." The whirling dervishes spun not just to enter trance, but to dissolve the self into that silent field where the ego could no longer interfere with the divine flow. To speak too much was seen as a sign of spiritual immaturity, because the tongue moves in the absence of inner certainty. But those who know do not need to speak. Their being communicates more clearly than any word. Even in Taoism, Laozi begins the Tao Te Ching with a declaration that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Silence here is not silence from the world, but silence from conceptual thought. It is a return to the origin, before names, before duality. Throughout history, this theme repeats with uncanny precision. Silence is the medium through which the sacred communicates, not because the sacred cannot speak in words, but because words are too small for what it says. The initiate, the mystic, the adept, they all knew that if one seeks the higher realms, they must first master the art of silence. For silence is not passivity. It is a stance, a discipline, a technology of consciousness that sharpens perception, softens the ego, and tunes the soul to frequencies beyond the material. We live in an age addicted to noise. Our thoughts race, our devices hum, and our inner dialogue never stops. And yet, hidden in the teachings of every ancient path is this same invitation. Be still, be silent, and know. Silence, in its highest form, is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of presence. It is the field in which all things arise and dissolve. It is the hidden doorway between the visible and the invisible, the known and the unknowable. But to truly understand why silence silence is the key to higher realms, we must strip away our common understanding and look with the eyes of the mystic. Imagine consciousness like a still lake. When the surface is calm and undisturbed, it reflects the sky perfectly. But the moment wind stirs the waters, when thoughts begin to ripple across the mind, the reflection becomes distorted. In this analogy, silence is not just the lack of noise. It is the stillness that allows the reflection of the divine to be seen clearly. When a person enters true inner silence, something profound happens. The lower self begins to fall away. The ego, that restless interpreter of reality, relies on constant commentary, labeling, judging, speaks in language, narrates in words. But silence does not feed the ego, it starves it. And in this starvation, the soul reawakens. In esoteric terms, the soul operates on subtle frequencies, like a radio tuned to higher channels. But most minds are too loud to hear them, like trying to listen to a whisper during a thunderstorm. It's not that the whisper isn't there, it's that the ears are too full of noise to detect it. Silence, then, is the tuning process, the harmonization of our inner instrument to receive information from higher planes. What are the higher realms? Some call them the astral, the etheric, the celestial. Others speak of angelic hierarchies, akashic records, or the oversoul. Regardless of the map, the truth is this: these realms are not reached by moving upward through space, but inward through consciousness. And silence is the elevator. When we silence our inner dialogue, we are not becoming empty, we are becoming receptive. Think of it like cleaning the lens of a telescope. The stars were always there, but without a clear lens, they remain unseen. The moment we enter deep silence, we begin to perceive subtle impressions, intuitive flashes, inner knowings, and messages from levels of reality far beyond intellect. But here lies a paradox. Silence is both a means and an end. We enter silence to reach higher realms, and once there, we discover that silence is the language spoken there. The beings of the higher worlds do not speak in words. They communicate through vibration, symbolism, direct transmission of meaning. It's as if entire lifetimes of wisdom can be understood in a single moment of communion. No speech required. This is why mystics across traditions retreat to mountains, deserts, caves, not for isolation, but for purification. Not to escape the world, but to become a vessel empty enough to receive what the world cannot offer. They knew that to commune with the divine, one must empty before one can receive. So we must ask ourselves, why do so many of us fear silence? Because silence confronts us with ourselves. In the absence of distraction, our unhealed wounds rise to the surface. Our loneliness, our confusion, our buried memories. But here is the hidden truth. Those shadows must rise before they can be transmuted. Silence is not just peaceful, it is powerful. It is an alchemical chamber where false identities dissolve and the authentic self emerges. The key to higher realms was never hidden. It was always here, quietly waiting. But only those willing to enter the sacred stillness will ever turn the lock. To deepen this journey, we must now explore the types of silence, because not all silences are equal. There is the silence of absence, what many experience as emptiness, boredom, or void. Then there is the sacred silence, which is not absence but presence intensified. This sacred silence is a living force, a palpable stillness that holds wisdom, memory, and meaning just beyond the reach of ordinary thought. Ancient mystics referred to this state as the Great Silence, a term found in both Eastern and Western esoteric texts. In the Kabbalistic tradition, it echoes the mystery of Ein Sof, the unmanifest source beyond form, beyond sound. In the Hermetic writings, silence was viewed as the precondition for divine contact. The Kybalion teaches that the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Silence is the gateway through which this understanding enters. We also find silence venerated in the Vedic texts. The Upanishads, whose very name means to sit down near, often teach through silence itself. The sage speaks and then falls silent, and in that silence, the student begins to see. In Taoism, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. What does this mean? That silence is the only medium subtle enough to convey the truth that cannot be spoken. But here's where things become even more profound. The higher realms are not merely silent, they are composed of silence. The frequency of these realms is not like the vibration of matter, but like the vibration of potential. Just as a seed holds the blueprint of a tree in perfect stillness, so too do the higher realms hold the archetypal patterns of existence in divine quietude. When you access these levels of consciousness, you begin to perceive the word before the word, pure creative intelligence before it becomes thought or language. That is why so many revelations, epiphanies, and transcendent insights occur in moments of silence, not activity. Have you ever noticed how the greatest realizations come when you're walking alone, gazing at the sky, or meditating in stillness. It is because the mind becomes translucent, and in that moment the light of the soul shines through. Now let us speak of another mystery, the language of silence. This is not poetic metaphor, it is real. In higher planes, beings communicate through telepathy, vibrational codes, symbolic light, and resonance. Words become cumbersome. It is not what is said, but what is felt and known in the transmission. To train yourself in silence is to prepare for interdimensional communion. To listen not just with the ears, but with the heart, the solar plexus, the very field of your awareness. Some esoteric schools teach students to sit in the silence, not to quiet the mind, but to train the subtle body, to become sensitive to fluctuations in energy, to distinguish truth from illusion, presence from projection. In silence, your consciousness becomes like still water, and even the faintest disturbance reveals itself. This is how inner guidance, angelic presences, or ancestral wisdom begin to make themselves known. Silence is also the crucible of manifestation. All acts of magic, ritual, prayer, and focused intent begin in silence. It is the 0 point, the space between the inhale and the exhale, where divine will can imprint itself upon the fabric of reality. The more silent the mind, the purer the intent. And the purer the intent, the more aligned it becomes with the creative forces of the universe. And finally, here is perhaps the greatest truth. You are the silence, not the noise, not the voice in your head. You are the field in which all thought arises. You are the awareness beneath the movement, the eternal witness. When you discover this, even briefly, you begin to see what the sages saw, what the mystics tried to describe, that the key was never out there. The silence we seek is not the absence of sound in the world. It is the presence of the infinite within. Now that we've ventured into the metaphysical and symbolic dimensions of silence, let us bring this ancient wisdom into practice. Because while silence is a mystical key, it is also a skill, a muscle of awareness you can train. Let's begin with a truth that every initiate must understand. True silence is not the absence of sound, it's the absence of resistance. You may be surrounded by noise, but if your inner field is still, you are in silence. Conversely, you could be in a quiet room and still be immersed in a storm of mental chatter. So the goal is not merely to escape to a quiet forest or dim-lit temple, although those help, but to cultivate inner silence, a state of undisturbed presence, wherever you are. Here are several practical techniques to begin working with silence as a spiritual tool. 1. The sacred pause. Throughout your day, create micro-moments of stillness. Before you speak, pause. Before you respond to a text, pause. Before you make a decision, pause. This pause, this breath, is a return to source. It shifts your awareness from automatic reaction to conscious presence. It is a reminder that you are not the thought, you are the awareness watching it arise. 2. The daily silence practice. 10 minutes. Each day, sit for 10 minutes in silence. No music.
No mantra, no visualización.
Simply observe. Let thoughts come and go without judgment. Watch your breath. Feel the pulse of being. In the beginning, your mind may rebel, but stay with it. With time, silence will begin to reveal its own textures, its own language. You will begin to hear between the thoughts. Tip: set a gentle timer and make this a sacred ritual, perhaps at dawn or just before sleep. 3. The inner ear activation. In some esoteric schools, students are taught to listen with the inner ear. This means focusing your awareness not outward, but inward, as if your consciousness were a satellite dish tuning in to a subtle signal. With practice, this inner listening sharpens your sensitivity to intuition, energetic shifts, and spiritual guidance. Try this. Close your eyes and imagine a field of stillness behind your thoughts. Lean into it. Let it envelop you. Ask no questions. Just listen. 4. Replace noise with space. Throughout your day, notice how often you reach for stimulation. Music, social media, conversations, news. Begin to replace some of these moments with intentional silence. For example, drive without music. Eat without your phone. Walk without headphones. Let life itself be the soundscape. You'll find that messages from your higher self or the universe itself become more audible in these spaces. 5. Silence before speaking. This is not just a communication tip, it's a magical act. Before you speak, enter a moment of silence within. Ask, is what I am about to say aligned with truth, with love, with necessity? This act alone will refine your energy field and begin transforming your relationships, your clarity, and your spiritual magnetism. Now, some common challenges arise when one starts this path. Restlessness. The modern mind is conditioned to fill every space. If you feel fidgety or anxious in silence, good. You are detoxing from noise addiction. Mental chatter. You can't stop the mind, but you can stop feeding it. Let thoughts pass like clouds. Don't engage. Observe. Emotional surfacing. Often, buried emotions arise when we enter silence. Let them. This is part of the alchemy. The silence is bringing them up to be transmuted. Remember, silence is not passive, it is active presence. Every moment you spend in conscious silence is like watering a sacred seed. In time, that seed will grow into something beautiful. Inner stillness, divine clarity, and even altered perception. And when you master silence, you no longer need to search for higher realms. You begin to live in them. Silence has always been misunderstood. It is seen as emptiness, absence, void. But now you know the truth. Silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of everything. In silence, the soul remembers. The noise of the world fades, and a more ancient melody begins to play, one that speaks in symbols, in feelings, in flashes of insight. It is the voice of the eternal self. We've explored how silence has been revered through history, as sacred in temples, feared by tyrants, and cultivated by mystics. We've uncovered its hidden function as a portal, a purifier, and a revealer of truth. We've seen how silence bridges dimensions, how it calms the surface and opens the depths. And most importantly, we've looked at how to make silence your practice, not as a retreat from life, but as a deepening into it, not just to empty the mind, but to fill the soul. So now I invite you not to believe, but to experience. Try the techniques, test them in the laboratory of your life. Watch what happens when you sit in silence, even for a few minutes a day. Observe how your inner landscape shifts, how your perception changes, how your energy refines. And remember, the door to the higher realms does not open with noise, with striving, or with more information. It opens with presence, with surrender, with silence. If this message resonated with you, you're already beginning to hear it, that ancient voice beneath all voices, the one that has waited patiently for you to become still enough to finally listen. Until next time, stay aware, stay awake, and stay silent.